we can always turn to Glenn Beck and Stu for some of the stupidest shit we've ever heard. The title of this one is what drew me to it. Now, we're not going to do this whole thing because there is no purpose. Lately, it is my opinion, and I think the opinion of many among us, that Glenn is day drunk, that he is hammered during the filming of the show. Now, there's other shit going on behind the scenes at the Blaze, and I don't know if you guys know this. So the network that Glenn Beck formed, it's his company, the Blaze. He started this fucking thing. Had a girl on there, named, I think, Sydney Watson. And by the way, I could do a whole fucking week's worth of shows on the bizarre, angry intrigue going on the right-wing tubosphere. That sounded dirty. Let's see. Let me try to find just an article on it that isn't just... There's a shit ton of... let's see. Bloomberg Law. There you go. Yeah, okay. So here's an article on it, so we don't have to jump into this. This is... So Sydney Watson is... I believe she's Australian. I'm fairly certain she's Australian. She's a right-wing female... YouTuber that got pulled into the Blaze and became a regular, did a show in there, and the energy of it was very like Jenna Marbles. She'd wear a wig and talk to herself, like standard run-of-the-mill production value for a YouTuber or whatever. But the Blaze brought her on as one of their regulars and then had her co-host a show for a short time. And then this happened. Now, when this happens to a right-wing organization by a right-wing member of their staff, it's got to be horrible. Because any woman who would work for the Blaze or whatever has definitely got to have boys are going to be boys, minimum amount of thick skin just to fucking hang out at a place like that. And be treated like shit on the regular because they somehow, I guess, believe it. Or at some point, maybe they just, the flavor of Kool-Aid or the money was so good that they just figured they could live with it because it was really just all in good fun and blah, blah, blah. The Blaze accused of sexual harassment bias by a female ex-show host. And this is, let's see, yeah, I've got to get a full article on it, blah, blah, blah. Okay. If you look at it first up, most of it will come up as YouTube videos. Sydney Watson sues the Blaze Media because this guy, Eliza Schaefer, was mean, gross, and sexually harassed her and yada, yada at work. And there's a ton of right-wing reaction to this happening. There's videos all over the place on YouTube. I've seen a bunch of them because I watch a bunch of these people to see where these talking points fucking come from. Here's the Daily Beast's article on it. This will have some clarity, and we'll probably get to see the actual article part. Yeah, Glenn Beck's media empire. This is her. So this is Sydney. She says right-wing star Eliza Schaefer was often drunk on set and sexually harassed her. Now, she's not the only one saying that Eliza Schaefer was drunk on set. He was drunk on the regular. And it became an embarrassing conversation point on Tim Pool's show and all these other stuff. Because this is, like I said, this is being hashed out. I don't even think do you guys even fucking know the shit show that is right-wing YouTube right now? Between Crowder and the Daily Caller and their back and forth, or the Daily Wire, and their contract dispute shit, which broke off into all these little fiefdoms. And then this, with Sydney Watson suing the Blaze. And then, what was the other one? There was another, Elijah Bleu, Eliza Bleu. Okay, so why don't we just pull this up for a second? If I may, let me put this over here, grab this over here, and let's see, I'll go to here. Let's see. Um, okay, here we go. I'll just, and then there's the other one was Steven Crowder, Daily Wire. So I'll just show you, like, here's Forbes has an article on this, but there's a bunch of this. So the first one, this is the current state of right-wing media, and this story might be the reason why Glenn has been drunk on set lately. Maybe just thinks he likes the press Eliza Schaefer's getting, or maybe, quite frankly, he's not, and he's just, got a severe blow to the head, or he's got long COVID, and it's, or he's drinking water out of lead containers just to say fuck you to the Biden administration. I don't know, but this is happening right now. Okay, this is currently in process. She's suing them because of how she was treated, and there's so much fucking news about it online, and so many people are backing her up, going, yeah, he's a dick, and he was drunk on set. Yeah, he was totally drunk on set. Like, nobody's even Schaefer was ultimately fired from the Blaze in September after allegedly drunkenly assaulting another Blaze media host by groping her breast during a movie premiere. At the time, the Blaze tweeted he had been fired for, quote, violating company policies and standards. But Watson's claims in her lawsuit that executives at the Blaze knew that Schaefer's problems with female employees went back far earlier. So it was ultimately, and it was like, they fired her because of, and that happened off campus. That wasn't at a private thing. I mean, it might have been a screening of their movie. They don't really go into that part of it in here. So that's the primary one. This is big story. Okay, so she's suing about this. It might turn into a class action from all the female employees at the Blaze, which would be fucking hilarious. Secondly, there's a woman named Eliza Bleu who alleged that she was a victim of sex trafficking and was going to advocate for sex trafficking victims from a right-wing perspective, and was making this, kind of like the border matters kind of stuff. And needless to say, a lot of people are dubious about her claims. And then other people are all in on protecting her. And at one point, Eliza Bleu had the ear of Elon Musk. And Elon Musk was basically running interference for her. She apparently accused people of posting pictures or short chunks of video of her from a music video she was in that's available online, of posting non-consensual nudes of her. So she was using the non-consensual nudes clause or the I don't know, like the menu to choose that as a way to hit accounts to get stuff taken down that was available readily and that she'd been paid to do, and that it was openly known, and it was just really odd. I don't give a fuck. Like, by the way, none of us have to give a shit about this. It's just funny. Just watch from the outside. So Eliza Bleu was at some point really close to, like, Tim Pool was all in on protecting her or supporting her or something in this stuff, mainly because I think he thought he was on the side of Elon Musk, whatever. Anyways, and then it's flipped. So now there's, that he's dumped out. So look at here. Let's look at, these are the images. This is what, these are the, like, this is the show called The Quartering, that Tim Pool attacked The Quartering over their attacks on the Eliza Bleu. And then, Tim Pool defends, Tim Pool responds versus extreme meltdown. He lost 10,000 followers because he told people to fuck off if they didn't support Eliza Bleu. And the very suspicious. Eliza Bleu panic deletes massive amount of things. Candace Owens calls out Eliza Bleu, Tim Pool's apology. So there she's fighting with him. And then Tim Pool defends Eliza Bleu and all that kind of stuff. And then, let's see, Eliza Bleu, let's see, is it The Quartering? Which is, I think, used to be like a fucking Magic the Gathering account or whatever. Yeah, there you go. She's finished. Eliza got me bad. What a joke. She's defeated. I'm under attack. They have FBI ties. What? Eliza Bleu deep FBI ties exposed? See what I mean? Like, the people are losing their shit. There's shit tons of this. Look at this. I've been banned. She's suing us. Eliza, the umbrella guy, Timcast loses big. Eliza Bleu, negative 10K subs. How deep does the Eliza Bleu hole really go? Yikes, that's a weird way of putting it. Spy Stream, Tim Pool's after show about Eliza Bleu in the quartering. Eliza Bleu body count continues. Tim Pool writer blast YouTubers. I don't know what the fuck that is. But anyways, they're all eating each other alive over this Eliza Bleu shit and have for weeks. Then, so we got this thing. We got Sydney Watson suing the Blaze, and the whole, like, everybody describing her, by the way, as woke. Look at this. These are all the videos about her. Sydney Watson sues the Blaze because Elijah. Sydney Watson gets woke and sues the Blaze. Sydney Watson versus the Blaze. Me Too lawsuit reaction. Let's see if are there images on this, and that's those are TikTok searches. Let's see if I'll just look at the images because you'll see the thumbnails on this. This has been going on for a while now. It's Blair White and Cindy Watson. These are all videos of her going. Okay, Sydney Watson sues the Blaze over abuse, alt media infighting erupting. Sydney Watson goes full SJW. That's the saying because of this. Because how dare you actually stand up for yourself? Sydney is finished. Tim Pool and Sydney and Baphomet and Elijah. What the shit? Suing, obsessed with dick. I don't know, whatever. Sydney Watson sues the Blaze. Sydney Watson sues the Blaze. There we go. They're on it. Like, here you go. And this is the show that they were on regularly. These two, they put her on a show with this guy. Pretty sure. Yeah, that's him. With Eliza Bleu. And Elijah Bleu. Elijah, what's his name? Anyways, just fucking terrible. So yeah, there you go. These two. They made them do a show together, and they did a show called You Are Here. It's like a podcast. And one of the guys, this one guy came on and just like cussed her out and was a complete asshole. And the idea was that, her co-host didn't come to her defense. It's just average shit. They had him on. Like, that's the kind of show we're talking about. So, like, again, to some degree, boo fuckity who. You're complaining about fleas, and you're surrounded by dogs. Then, third story. Ben Shapiro and Steven Crowder are in the midst of a hilarious feud. So, the Daily Wire was trying to get Steven Crowder to join. And he's got a big media empire at this point. He's growing his own Alex Jones, cul-de-sac of right-wing, I don't know if it'd be like a confirmation bias bubble that you can go live in, like an igloo. And they were like, he's making some big money. Maybe we could roll him into our thing, and we'll because we've got all this reach in the secondary money, we can, we'll make a deal and kind of bring him under the fold and offer them. And he apparently thought that the deal was like dangerous and full of shit and blah, blah, blah. And then we mentioned it a while back because it came up. But it's just all ankle biting all the fucking time. This is, if there are three main groups of right-wingers on the web that we deal with like regularly, as far as you see their talking points, whether you know where they came from or not, they came from the Blaze and Glenn Beck shows and the other shows off there. Tim Pool and the Quartering and those guys, and the Wire, the Daily Wire, and Steven Crowder. They are the upstarts of the entire right-wing foundation going forward is like crumbling. It's so they hate each other. It's hilarious. And by the way, if anybody wants to compare this to like my problems with the Young Turks or Jimmy Dore, for example. Okay, first of all, I never claimed to be on the same side as those guys in terms of strategy or whatever. Like, we're all pulling together, right, guys? I was on the Young Turks once, ages ago. Never on Dore Show. Never, why would I be? Never was on a segment where he was there because it's just like gross. So it's not surprising that that people go, oh, there's some of that stuff going on. No. Because here's the thing. All my problem with them is about them being anti-voting. is them stopping, demoralizing people, creating nihilism where they stop people from voting. It is a tactical and strategic and, I believe, moral disagreement that I have with them as people. That's not what's happening with these assholes. This is all just, in the case of this one, this is all just bullshit contract where they're trying to eat each other, and one of them's like, I'm too big for your fucking mafia. This stuff is just, you know, people knocking boots and fucking around. The Eliza Bleu stuff with Tim Pool and the quartering and all this stuff is straight up fucking high school. And this, the Sidney Watson stuff is someone working at a place that touts that there's no such thing as sexual harassment, essentially getting sexually harassed and then trying to, you know, salvage your career after the fact. That's a whole, there's 3 other fucking ballparks. I did wonder why you hate TYT and Hassan so much. I don't watch a lot of Hassan. I think he's just terrible at explaining stuff. I think he's, you know, he's basically like right-wing fuel. He gives them clips that they can, you know, occasionally he'll blame the United States for 9/11, shit like that, and that'll give them, you know, fuel and say the left is something it's not because of something he said. And secondarily, like, again, TYT, look, if you're a fish and the other person is a fisherman, there is no value to them just dropping a fucking hook in the water because you won't bite it. Why would you? So they put a worm on it, something you like, something you normally consume. That's how fishing works. And the nihilist anti-voting methodology of TYT ultimately is, yeah, we hate all the things you hate. Oh, these assholes. Oh, they're terrible. Oh, what an idiot. Oh, these people are gross. Oh, but don't vote for Democrats either because it's 2 legs in the same pair of pants, and the establishment corporate Democrats. But ultimately, you know, it's like, we, you know, that guy and then whatever, you know, each time. And then, you know, 3 weeks before an election, they go, you should definitely vote for Democrats right now because you vote for Hillary because it could be worse and he could win. You know, in the case of Trump, after you spend a year and a half calling her a baby-killing neo-con warmonger. It doesn't work that way. So there will always be a worm on the hook. You like worms. They taste delicious. They're full of protein. It's a whole animal from the rooter to the tutor. But in this particular case, it's got a hook in it. That's the thing. I got no hooks in this. I want you to make up your mind and participate in democracy. Even if you're a troll and you're watching me, and I'm not going to change your mind, I still want you to express your political views by voting because the alternative involves people getting fucking killed. I ain't about that. So there you go. All right. Does that make sense? Yeah. So here we go. This is... the title of this one stuck out to me, a long story short. Too late. Space Force Vet. That really says that. Space Force Vet. We have Space Force veterans. People have already retired from the Space Force. Cool. I suppose you can. China spy balloon is great timing for Biden. That's very suspicious. So they're doing it. So the Chinese are helping. This is how it's the laundromats. It's the laundromats. Yeah. So we're not going to watch all of this. I just wanted to see what this nonsense is.
Meyer is on with us. Hello, Matthew. How are you?
Glenn, I'm well, thank you.
Yes, he's a former Space Force lieutenant colonel, retired at the young age of 38.
Thank you.
It's good to talk to you. Now, I should say thank you, first of all, for your courage. You had a nice position as a lieutenant colonel at Space Force, and you came out and started talking about the dangers of CRT and what was being done by the Pentagon, and they didn't like that very much.
Yeah, well, thanks for first bringing...
Okay. First of all, you mean he had a cush job at Space Force with nothing to fucking do? Trump had put him in and his buddies, because he was very Trump friendly, had bounced him into an area where he was, unless we get invaded by aliens, which I suppose is always an option. where I mean, I'd have to know more about the dude to know whether he would suggest we negotiate before we obliterate. He was apparently bounced from that job because he was a bigot.
I did have a good position, so to speak, and I was
So to speak.
in command of our nation's space-based missile warning enterprise, which
Our space-based missile warning system. You mean NORAD's in charge of those? They're satellites. We don't have people floating up there with fucking binoculars. What the hell does that mean?
implies senior military leaders at some point did, in fact, trust me to be a good leader. And
honest to God, it depends on if that's even a real job, dude. It's entirely possible it is, but I don't know what the fuck you're talking about.
to make proper strategic
Oh, thank you, Dawn. I appreciate that. Yes, Chud is doing all right. She's asleep upstairs. I will be checking with her right after this.
assessments and whatnot. But the fact is, I didn't just write an expose or a book that I then made public without first bringing up some of my concerns with senior military leaders themselves. The entire chain of command of the Space Force had been aware of what should properly be characterized as overt left-wing political talking points, anti-American sentiment in the military workplace. And I was bringing that to their attention, which included Marxist-rooted critical race theory in the form of what we call diversity and inclusion trainings.
All right, so again, this is one of those things where diversity inclusion training is CRT is Marxism, because the idea is that everyone's equal, whether they're equal or not. Instead of, we have some folks coming in that look different from you, and you can't refuse to serve next to them. And if you're if you have a hostile working environment in very tight quarters all the time, you're gonna have to get over that shit. So part of your training is, you know how you have to do more push-ups in the military than you would normally have to do in real life? Yeah, same shit. There's some discomfort because it's outside your normal action zone. If it isn't, let's say you're a dude who rolls in, you can do 200 push-ups fucking at the drop, and they only ask you to do 100, you're going to twiddle your thumbs during that training, aren't you? You're going to sit there literally like, but if you can barely do 10, like, or barely do 5, I guess, like Bill Murray in Stripes, you know, that's definitely it's gonna be a bit of a challenge, is it not? Same thing with like diversity training. If you already get along with people, you're gonna go, this is fucking okay, I have to go through this. If it's really a stressful thing for you, maybe it's because you need it more than other people. Maybe you do harbor a bunch of other shit, and that stuff will pop up its ugly head while you're in the middle of a fucking emergency. And you're not allowed to do that because you're fighting for every American, whether you like the look of them or not. It's a special gig.
But they agreed with me that it was a big problem. But the fact is, who are you going to hold accountable for it? Are we in the proper climate that we've created for ourselves to hold some of these activists accountable? And apparently,
what do you mean? And again, what is holding activists accountable? Activists will present a path or and maybe even extreme version of things, but you might be able to take, okay, look, we're not going all the way that way, but some of this might actually help. And so you incorporate that in. That's usually how it works in big corporations, in the military, in the government, and that kind of stuff. We're like, we're not going like straight down the road with anybody who suggests a brand new plan for life on Earth, but there might be a couple of things to learn that might ultimately be helpful, and we'll incorporate a few of those things in. That's essentially what this guy is bitching about.
the answer was no. We weren't in a position to try and hold them accountable. We were afraid. And so that led to a formal written Inspector General's complaint, which was dismissed right during the election season, in fact. And so I wrote a book about it. I was in a unique position in uniform to see what was happening within
the Space Force. Dude, you probably had like 25 inclusion and diversity training sessions because they didn't know what else to do with you guys.
Ranks of the military and how divisive that ideology can be. I've often said what Marxism does to someone in China, it will do to an American.
Well said. first of all, full disclosure, I happen to think Marxism is garbage, and Marx was a bigot and an asshole, and the entire premise that socialism or communism can only work after industrialization means that it can only survive on the kill of capitalism. Like capitalism being the hunter takes down the elk, and the only way you can survive is to eat off that elk and claim you're a vegetarian because you didn't participate in the killing of it. And the eater of a vegetarian is a vegetarian in this idea. It's fucking stupid. It's ridiculous. Marxism, socialism, capitalism, those systems were all the names and what we expect from those ideologies were built when there were less than 2 fucking billion people on the planet. We're a whole different planet now. So we need updated ways of expressing the way we allow people to strive and get ahead and show their best, and make sure that there's a safety net for people who can't help but be left behind in certain circumstances. And then we got to work out the gray area in the gooiness of life. But the idea that socialism or communism can only come to be, because communism can only come after socialism, and socialism can only come after capitalism has industrialized an area. That was Marx's philosophy on there. Is stupid. It's idiotic. If you have to wait for your system to work after someone else's has worked, your system doesn't work. It's not a system. It's a barnacle. A barnacle is not the whale. And if it needs the whale to survive, it can't call itself a fucking whale in waiting because it swims alongside it. It's stupid. Plus, Marx used the N-word a lot. He also used the N-word to describe Jews in a way that he couldn't just be anti-Semitic. He also had to tack on what he thought was a subhuman race to make Jews look even worse in his correspondence with Engels. It's awful. Just get out of here with that nonsense. Period. End of conversation. You can't call yourself a vegan if you spent your entire life, you became Arnold Schwarzenegger eating nothing but like beef and lamb and fucking alligator, and you get all muscular and you go, I am muscular because I am a vegan. When did you become a vegan? 3 days ago. What happens if your muscles start to wither? Well, obviously I'll have to go back to being a carnivore during that time. But in my mind, I'm still a vegan. Like, it's stupid. It's childish. The argument is fucking childish. Now, these guys will take Marxism, because it does fail on those points, and pepper any social support system with it, because socialism, social security, they will, because of the words attached to it, they will align them, even though Social Security, first of all, you pay into it. It is simply a form of insurance, which falls under the realm of market endeavors and capitalism on its base. Secondarily, it is where we do support it on a governmental level, it is through elected representatives guiding tax policy. That's not socialism at all. That's democratic taxation. Taxation with representation. We put representatives in there that represent the values of society, and the values of society when it comes to Social Security is that old people shouldn't have to die starving to death eating cat food because they can't work anymore, or keep working past their fucking back, after their backs were broken from labor all their fucking lives. Social justice is a well-meaning phrase that means nothing. There is no justice in social interaction. There is only mutual respect or disrespect. You can't. I like that. That's one of those phrases that worked its way up in people trying to weave a conversation point to explain something, right? Read Factfulness by Dr. Hans Rosling. It's important to understand in understanding this stuff. Okay, I will take a look at it. Thank you for that. There you go. Okay, so anyways, but they're going to use, Marxism to describe anybody who wants a social safety net program because social and socialism have social in them. It's like, these are the same people who think anybody who uses the word folks when talking to people are echoing the word Volks, as in Volkswagen, the people's wagon, which is a Germanic word used to a German word used to describe the proletariat. So Volks meaning. Here, let's see if we could do this. So the word Volk, which is folk, was used by a lot of communists to describe like the people's this, and there are different usages of the word people's in our governmental and political philosophy worlds, because there's like the people's house, which would be either the White House or the Capitol, depending on which one you're talking about, because the people pay for it to exist. That's why but it's not a common in the communistic term, like the people's farmland or something like that. And in the case of some people, when they say, the people's this or the people's that, there are a lot of us use that in a simple form to represent all the citizens of a country, like without saying citizen. So you can intermix those words. People of the United States, the citizens of the United States, same thing. People just means a group of humans. But in communistic circles, the people's this is a reference to the commons, and it has to do with the use of the word Volk, and folks being a word for the sense of people as in a crowd, accountable group, an ethnic group, or a nation. So that's where folk comes from. And so when people say folks, what they're supposedly hearkening, and what the right wing will sometimes throw out there, it doesn't stick a lot because nobody really thinks this. And plus, it became a folksy term. That's where folk music came from. The idea why it's left leaning, why folk music is about the machine, it's about war, it's about the corporations, it's about like coal companies and train companies destroying stuff. That's where it came from, right? Yes, Volk in German means people in the sense of a tribe or nation, right? And it also, in terms of a political strata, in terms of communist or socialist movements, they refer to them, folks, as the Volks. I think it was like the Volksfrei movement relates to that as well. Point being is that when you and I say, folks, listen, we just mean people. We just mean, hey, guys, like we use it kind of blanketly. All those words are interchangeable. But there are certain people who use them in many ways, like in the same kind of dog whistly way that Republicans will say, we're going to take our country back. They'll say our as a reference to, it doesn't belong to everybody here. It belongs to some of the people here and just us, and not those folks, if you know what I mean. But in our particular, like I said, we blanket use it. But in the case of like Howard Zinn or somebody like that, when he says like the people's history of the United States, he's writing, in his estimation, a communist-centered presentation of the United States. That the failure of the United States is that it is an inability to become communist over time, and that these things he points out in the people's history of the United States are like, he views them as like roadblocks on the road to communism. They've wrecked it. Every time we've never been able to get to communism because of all this fuckery and this fuckery and this fuckery and this fuckery. But he uses the word people in that particular phrase. Okay. Just become a sub-lesson in Marxism and all that kind of stuff. I'm sorry about that. But that's been sticking in my head lately.
CRT, as we're increasingly aware, destroys everything it touches. So it was important.
Yes, and it's amazing how little it's actually touched. It's actually destroyed everything it touches, Trump and MAGA. Mm-hmm.
To talk up about that. But
also, I don't know that they burned any books lately, the CRT folks.
But we've got it.
Also, critical race theory comes from critical theory and its legal front, that you can't, that there are no absolutes, and that you've got to weigh past injustice to present injustice in your weighing of matters right in front of you. And so critical theory was put out there like, it's where we get the idea, and that we've kind of gotten stuck on in this country, and that I've talked about a few times, where let me say this in a way that I can try to be abundantly clear. Just because someone does something that you think is crazy or insane or nuts, like when you see somebody do something awful and you're like, that's crazy, that's awful, that's insane, does not mean they are crazy or insane. You would view it as crazy or insane because it is so out of the realm of anything you would do. But the fact that they're doing it isn't always and solely based on the idea that they have past mental damage that has caused them to do this. CT in its original form is largely based on this this idea that that every murderer is insane. It's just a matter of degree, because it's not sane to kill someone. And the reality is that insanity is based on an uncontrollable impulse. In that regard, like you could have, if you were healthy, stopped yourself from doing this thing, but you're not healthy because your impulse drove you to do it, whether you even schemed about it for a good long while, but the moment you actually did it was because you couldn't beat that impulse and you just went ahead with it. Now, there are people who do that, people who are clinically insane and have porous prefrontal cortexes caused by any myriad of things, from drugs to lead poisoning to all kinds of stuff. But there are also people in the world who have found a way to meet their needs at the expense of other people. Auschwitz guards were not insane. They were aware of what they were doing, and they perceived what they were doing as a way of meeting their personal needs. Not just, if I don't hold this post, my boss might kill me because we have to fight in a war, but also they got some enjoyment out of it, that they felt that they got physical, sexual, or personal ego pleasure out of that outweighed the pain they saw in another person. And it wasn't because of a mental defect or a history of mental illness on their part. It was because at some point in their life, a certain need had not been met, and they found a way to meet it by being fucking evil. And the vast majority of people who commit murder, and I would argue anybody who breaks into a house and burglarizes it, follows that thing. Because again, the act of breaking into someone's house is one of the biggest acts of ego that any human being could do. The idea that you should be allowed in someone else's house is, the ego involved in that thought alone is incredible. Think about yourself. Think about walk down a street in your neighborhood, look at somebody's house and go, I deserve to bust their window and climb in through there and take whatever's there. And if anybody gets between me and what I want, I can do them in. That is in of itself. That's not an act of impulsive insanity. That's an act of someone going, I got needs and you're in between them and fuck you. There's more of that in the world. There's 8 billion people in the world. There's plenty of that. In the particular case that we're talking about, in terms of CT, in terms of critical thinking, they were the ideas that historic injustice or a history, familial, even cultural, going back centuries, can excuse an action in the present. And critical race theory just perpetuated, just drag that to specify on race. That if a Native American man on Native American soil inside America kills a Native American woman and buries her someplace in a domestic dispute like any other couple has, it's not because he's an asshole murderer and he killed a woman and buried her so he could get away with it, so other people wouldn't find out. It's because treaties were broken in the 1700s. That's the essence of it. And that somehow he is actually excused from that murder, and that she just got to kind of take one for the team, and get, her family doesn't get justice, and she has to die quietly because that dude is actually acting on an impulse that's centuries old, which I have to say is fucking bananas. Like, if that's the theory, if that's that's the basis of it, it's just pitiful. It doesn't add up. It's dehumanizing at the highest order. You're talking about human beings, especially minorities in the cases where they bring it up, as if they are animals just operating on instinct. And I'm sorry, but I just see all my fellow humans as fully human and capable of the entire spectrum of human goodness and awful. And over time, through their own choices, they decide for themselves whether they had good parents or bad parents, whether they were abused or whether they were raised in privilege, to choose the life path in front of them to be as good to as many people as they possibly can, or to be as awful to as many people as they can. And that is their own choice. And I mean, can you imagine some dude like a serial killer, like offering his lawyers coming in and putting up a defense? Yeah, but Your Honor, you understand, and women, ladies and gentlemen of the jury, he's Irish, and the potato famine, followed by indentured servitude in the beginning of the United States, and the use of Irish slurs throughout New York and Chicago for decades before he was born, are largely responsible for why he murdered prostitutes for 12 years. Like, so you're saying he's a zombie. You're saying he's a dog. You're saying he's a pit bull who shook the baby. Is this really the theory? Yes, it is the theory. That is the theory. That is the root of CRT. And by the way, CRT is not diversity training. What this guy's bitching about, and this is the important distinction, diversity training is not CRT. That's why they want, and by the way, they don't want diversity training. They want to separate people. So they want CRT and diversity training to be intertwined. Diversity training is simply, hey, you come from the sticks. Hey, you come from the inner city, and you may not have interacted with a bunch of hillbillies before, or you may not have interacted with that many black folks before, and because of how you were raised, you might talk some shit now and again that will cause some difficulties in unit cohesion. So we're going to teach you guys how to get along and understand each other because you're new. That's fine. That's what diversity training is for. It is not to drive a further wedge, and it is not to turn half the people in the workforce into autonomous animals who have no control over their ability to keep a job, be violent, or not do drugs or whatever, because they're fucking, a century removed from the Hatfields and McCoys. You know what I mean? It's silly. Humans are humans. Believe in the total humanity of every person you encounter. See them as a human being and judge them on the behavior that they have in their life fully. And when someone's clinically insane, has a mental disorder, we should seek as a society to find a way to help that person, even as egregious as their crimes might be. If they are truly insane because of a mental defect, we should do what we can to heal them, because it is no different from a heart problem or a liver problem. It simply affects the brain, which is a behavioral thing. But just because somebody does something that is cruel and unusual and violent and sickening to you does not mean that it's caused by mental health, or because they had a shitty upbringing, or their singular abuse or whatever. Freud's an asshole, and that was never found to be the case. And a lot of people have those similar situations and grow up to be actors and comedians. They grow up to be counselors. They grow up to help people who've gone that way. The ones who don't are the ones who, along the road, took their experience and went, hey, I can take that experience, I saw them getting pleasure. I'll get the same pleasure for myself down the road. Now, there's definitely trauma and damage that can be helped, and those folks can hopefully be guided away from that over time. But there's no guarantee in it. And some folks just have found the magic key to getting their six basic needs met through being a terrible human being. Nazism as a force was not created by mass mental illness. It was caused by a large group of people getting their needs met through the worst kind of human violence. Same with the thing with the Mongol hordes invading Europe that we talked about ages ago. Those guys weren't mentally ill. They were raised and taught in a system that said this is how you get your needs met, but they also agreed. They found that to be true. The ones that didn't find that to be true got on their horse and ran off to another country and seeded a family far, far away, or they died because they wouldn't fight or something like that. Anyways, sideline. Anyways, back to dickhead from,
as you've mentioned, bigger
the Space Force
concerns on the horizon and happening in the country at the moment.
Well, before we leave this subject, today I found out that the recruiting for the military is down 25% off goal. And I saw what the military...
By the way, that's fairly regular.
...said. They said, that's because the youth, they just, they don't see the military as relevant. Really? How come all of a sudden, after Afghanistan and after the CRT nonsense...
I see. So, 20 years of Afghanistan... and multiple presidents trying to get us the fuck out of there. And Biden finally does. And also, by the way, when he means after Afghanistan, he means the 13 soldiers that were killed getting out of there, not the 20 years of dragging on bullshit that our soldiers were trying to do honorably while they were over there in the midst of a monstrous situation.
Your recruiting went down through the tubes.
Went down through the tubes.
That didn't play a role?
Well, yeah,
Well, Space Force obviously has got too many people in it because this dude they broomed him at a young age. Obviously, a lot of people are looking for those cush jobs.
The things, it's easy to tell at a glance at any given moment how our recruiting efforts are doing, but what it's not easy to assess real time at a glance is how our retention efforts are doing, and that's often left out of the headlines. But
also, by the way, one of the reasons why military recruiting is down is because there are more jobs available. Lots of them. When unemployment gets this low and there are still that many jobs available, people don't have to join the military as their only option to go to university and the like. That's the percentage. Probably about 20% of people who join the military on the regular, as far as what their goal is, come from a group of people who don't really have that many options. It's a really good option for them to get a career and all that kind of stuff. That's what those ads in the 80s and 90s were about.
I talk to service members all the time. They reach out both thanking me for my book and also seeking for help, quite frankly, on how to navigate the current politicized...
Yes. How do I... they keep wanting me to talk to black people, and there's a woman in here now. It's really... Don't tell anybody who I am. I just...
workplace in the uniformed services, but they are telling me, and this is anecdotal, I get it, but it's real world on the ground intel, that they...
Yes, it's anecdotal, but it's real world on the ground intel. Fucking hell.
A bunch of people that are currently in uniform, their active duty service commitments aren't up yet, but when they are up, they're going to be getting out of the service. And so not only do we face recruitment issues, we're going to have a really difficult time this year in the...
Why? So so these guys just joined. So the people you're talking to on the regular just joined the military so that they could go to college, and if they ever have to get an active duty assignment, they're going to drop out. Huh? I'm just saying, if you're talking about a slice of of a particular slice of a demographic of people, it seems like that's who this dude is talking to.
next year, retaining folks who have served for a very long time. It's a really tough.
There's that word, folks. He used folks. Commie.
Position to be in. And it's not just COVID's fault, and it's not, pick the issues that senior defense officials want to point a finger at and shame and blame. It's the very policies that are being pushed down the pipe right now and foisted upon our service members that's hurting morale and disincentivizing them from continued service.
By the way, no, it's not. It's conversations like this. If anybody hears this, they might be dissuaded from joining, but that has nothing to do with it. Not at all. There are just more and better financial options for people than there ever have been before. That's why. And that will continue, by the way. And at some point, I guarantee this. I guarantee this. And it might be in 5 years, it might be in 10 years, it might be in 25 years. But the U.S. military is going to have a conversation about the fact that Americans' lives are so cush that they cannot sufficiently fill infantry positions at all. They can get pilots, they can get commanders, they can get officer corps and that kind of stuff. But as far as grunts doing grunt shit, there just aren't people available to do it. So we're gonna have to move to robots. It's gonna happen, kids. I guarantee it. And I'll tell you one thing, the soldiers will not be replaced by bipedal humanoid robots at all. At that point, it's not going to be a bunch of, fucking Tesla bots in camo walking around.
We're talking to former Space Force Lieutenant Colonel Matthew Lohmeyer. You can find him at MatthewLohmeyer.com or follow him on Twitter at Matthew Lohmeyer. I want to switch now to...
I can't find him at superspaceforce.org.
To the balloons that we've had.
Oh, my God. Thank you. Someone from Space Force to talk about shit that happens in the air. This is how dumb Glenn Beck is. I'll be here all fucking night. This is how dumb Glenn Beck is. Glenn Beck has someone from Space Force to talk about things that have nothing to do with space. That's right. I don't know if you know this. Maybe Glenn doesn't. But our atmosphere, the part that ain't space, is full of air. And so, outside of it, you would have Space Force. Inside of it, you would have Air Force. That's right. And Air Force would handle all the things that were in the air, and Space Force would handle all the shit in space. It's kind of like the CIA, FBI. FBI is inside the United States, CIA is outside. But specifically, Glenn Beck is having on someone who was in the Space Force, but was sick of having to be taught to deal with minorities around him and women, and therefore was discharged for being an asshole or chose to get out of there or negotiated his exit so it wouldn't look as bad as it was, so he could write a CRT book and sell it to dickheads like Glenn Beck. And Glenn Beck rewards him by bringing him on as a former member of Space Force to talk about things that are in the air, specifically balloons. Now, space balloons? I don't know. Are there space balloons? I'm just saying it would make Star Wars really fucking boring. It would look like a cross between Star Wars and Mary Poppins. Just chim chimney, chim chimney, chim. Like, oh God. Why? Why in the world? Why in the hell